Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and tonight I am here just to help you relax, to drift off to sleep by the sound of the waves, like the whispers of old souls. I know you have come to this video not just to hear the story, but also to find a deep, peaceful sleep. But before we begin, please gently like the video and subscribe to the channel so I can continue to tell you strange stories under the dim moonlight. Where are you from? And what time is it where you live? Just relax. Let your body relax. Put all your worries down by your pillow. Let me take you into a world of mysteries where the wind and the waves mingle, and unsolved mysteries are waiting to be told. Are you ready? Gardener's World. You've chosen a good time to pay me a visit. I've pulled up some pretty decent leeks this morning. Got some lovely onions in the store, and a rosemary bush that is totally oblivious to all the nonsense that seems to have befallen our world. My garden really has been my savior, my little farm. I can grow what I need and get by very nicely on what my garden supplies. I do wish I'd had a better crop of carrots. I used the finest bone meal fertilizer, but they were a total bust this year. My soil is a little too heavy for them, too much clay. But it's the carrot fly that really did for them. They said our biggest enemy was the sickness. Then they tried to say it was the foreign governments. Then it was all about misinformation and the enemy within. But I survived because I knew all along my only real enemy is carrot fly. When the gas supply was cut off back in '25, I opened up an old fireplace so I could cook on an open flame indoors. Not a pretty job, no power tools, naturally. So me and Axe had to do most of the heavy work, hacking out the wall they'd used to gag the old hearth. I like it though. The exercise, solving problems, working out a plan to get me to the next crop. Most of the stuff we've lost, I didn't care for anyway. You're lucky today with the weather. It gets too smoky and hot indoors, even with the chimney. No, on a day like this, we cook al fresco. Something lovely about doing my cooking in the place where I get most of my food. I'm a man of nature. That's what I am. You saw my roses on the way in, didn't you? It's the roses and the raspberry canes that bring people to my garden. I took part of the fence down so people can see them more easily, so they can come in and explore. Fancy that. In times like these, someone actually taking part of a good, strong fence down. Well, there's method to my madness. I like to have visitors. Brought you here to me today, didn't it? Relax. Enjoy the sun. Would you like some water? I've got plenty. Since the neighbors have been thinning out, I've been using their houses' guttering, as well as my own, to collect the rain. Been able to grow in their gardens too. That's why I'm doing so well in these tough times. That's why I can afford to lose a few raspberries to curious, hungry bypassers. Waste nothing and work hard. That's me. Do whatever needs to be done. Please, have some water. But how is he going to cook out here, you ask? A very good question. Let me just remove this old tarp. And ta-da! An old enamel bath, not as common as they once were. But this beautiful old iron roll top was in my neighbor's place. He was a lawyer in the old days. Fat lot of good that did him. Must have cost a fortune. Weighs a ton. I convinced them to help me carry it here in exchange for some food and water. And here we are, those old claw and ball feet holding it up above my fire. An antique bath sitting on my lawn in the shade of my willow. Heaven, you look a bit concerned. Don't worry about the staining on the sides of the bath. That's inevitable when you cook with direct heat like this. It looks dirty, but it's not. It's just well seasoned from all the grease and juices. I'll just get this fire lit. Thank you for gathering all of this wood, by the way. Told you I'd trade you for water and the raspberries, didn't I? I'm a man of my word. We'll need a couple of buckets of water for the tub. And what else? I think today we'll have a couple of these leeks. No carrots, though. Curse you, carrot fly. And I think we'll have a big, dirty handful of the fresher stems from my gnarly old rosemary bush. Don't worry, the heat will kill the germs. I'll use some of this too. Take a look. It's a pot of fat. My grandma would have called it dripping. You must keep this stuff. It's more valuable than gold, literally, these days. I preserve it whenever I cook. It's full of calories and protein and goodness. It keeps for ages. I've got a cupboard full of it. This is from the last few rabbits I cooked. It's a bit of a cocktail, to be honest. Rabbits, rats, squirrels, street rats, raspberry thieves. Only joking, they weren't thieves. You're not a thief. I can spare a few raspberries. I'm going to get this beautiful stuff, nice and hot, and then get the leeks in there. Then the water and the rosemary. Axe, get over here, you big lump. He looks brutal, but I keep him sharp enough to chop the leeks. Look, he's bright as a sushi knife. I can use him to shave. Look close. There now. A slice of leek you can see through. That will just melt in the fat. My mouth is watering. Did you hear that? I love that sound, that sizzle. The popping twigs under the bath. The first chunk of leek sliding around in there, in all that greasy goodness, hissing and cackling. The sun weeping through the old willow. No more horrible planes overhead. No traffic. No more reports about all the doom and gloom. No more sirens. Just a sizzle and a pop, and the waft of home cooking on the late summer breeze. Potatoes. How could I forget potatoes? I sometimes think I'm losing my mind. Not many of this year's crop left, but this is the best way to use them. They add body. Oh, that was unintentional. Sorry. Please don't be upset. Poor taste has no place in my garden. Well, I must say, it's been nice to have someone to talk to other than Axe. It has been a while. The raspberries will be dying off soon, and the roses won't last for much longer after that. I suspect I'll be getting fewer visitors, but never mind. I'm going to have plenty of provisions to keep me strong over the winter. And there's still blackberries out, so you never know. I'll be fine in the house, sleeping in the cellar with Axe. Anyway, looks like we've got a rolling boil going here. So sorry, but it's bath time. Agorafans, Mummy and Daddy left me. They went away and left me on my own in this scary place with sharp and spiky stones that stab my feet. I don't want to cry on this beach, if it is a beach, because the only sound is that of pebbles crunching beneath my toes, and my voice sounds weird, like an echo. There's nothing to see except the wispy gray fog that folds around me. It feels like I'm by the sea because of the stones and that disgusting, salty smell. But I can't hear any waves or people splashing. If it is the seaside, a boring seaside with a stony beach, I don't know how I got here. I remember being with Mummy and Daddy. We went for a picnic and stopped at the toy store. Daddy bought me a brand new cat plush, Miss Mittens. At least she's here to keep me company. If I didn't have her, I think I would really cry. Not because of the stones, or the fog, or the smell, but because Mummy and Daddy left me. Why would they bring me here? Why would they go home without me? When are they coming back? I don't understand. The next day, Mummy and Daddy left me, and I don't know where they are. I'm crying now, because I've been lost on this beach for so long. And when I see the woman float out of the fog with a smile and a big fluffy blanket, I know she'll help. I know, Tilly. I'm sorry I'm late. It took me some time to locate you. How do you know my name? I ask the woman as she bundles me in her blanket. I've been in my nightdress on this seaside with no sea, and the fog has been getting frosty, so it's nice to be wrapped in something warm. Did Mummy and Daddy send you? Not exactly, Tilly. Mummy and Daddy are sorry they couldn't get to you themselves, but I'm here now, and I'll take care of you. Come along. Let's get you someplace safe. Home? My home, Tilly. For a while. Don't worry. There are other girls like you there. I'm sure you'll make friends. And you can rest while we figure this out. The woman in the old-fashioned dress that has lacy trim around the collar puts her arm around me, and we start to walk back the way she came. stones crunching and crumbling beneath her fancy boots and my frozen toes. I have lots of questions, but I don't know which to ask first, so I say nothing and think about what she said. New home? Other girls? Figure this out? My face feels funny, I say, and my eyelids grow heavy. Your face is beautiful, the woman answers, but I don't reply. Another day, Mummy and Daddy left me, and the house went on fire. That's what Mabel Montgomery is trying to say, in a roundabout way, like I'm a baby. But I know she's wrong. There's no way Mummy and Daddy would leave me alone. And there's no way our house would go on fire because it's a new house with fire alarms and everything. And there's no way I died because I'm sitting in an armchair in an office wearing a stiff blue dress that was laid out for me when I woke up, in a bed with tall posts and a lace canopy. I don't know why she's doing this. I thought she was nice when she brought me here, to this mansion with dozens of rooms and maids and girls. But now I think she might be trying to kidnap me. Maybe she did that to the others. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone yet, because I just got up today after sleeping for a really long time. But sleeping for a long time is not the same as dying. I know it's hard, the woman with the silver hair says. You need time, but I'm here for you. We will work together to get you through this. And then, when you're ready, we'll find someone nice to take care of you. She places a hand on my shoulder and smiles, but I don't trust her. Not anymore, because it's a lie. This manor, the beach, the fog, a lie, or a dream, or a nightmare. What else can explain the face staring back at me from the mirror as Mabel leads me from her office? The horrible, burnt face of a monster that couldn't be me, because I didn't die in a fire. Yet another day. You're Tilly, right? I'm Jessica. I hope you're doing okay. I know it's a lot to take in, finding yourself here. I know it hurts, a lot. But you'll survive. It's easy for her to say. The teenager in the dress that's the same style as mine, except green. Her face isn't scarred and disgusting. Her hands aren't marbled and shiny. She has long blonde hair like I did. She's pretty. I heard what happened. It must have been so scary. I know how scared I was when I was drowning, but I can't imagine what it must have been like to. She tries to be brave and look at my face while she talks, but the look of pity in her eyes is worse than the look of disgust I see in others, and I hate it. I don't remember, all right? Can you go away? I want to be on my own. Sure. I just thought you might want to talk. I know it isn't easy coming to terms with things. We've all been through it. You'll see a lot of girls like you, keeping to themselves. You'll see girls with injuries and wounds they're not ready to let go of. You'll see others like me. But none of us had it easy. So take your time. It will get better, I promise. I said, leave me alone. I surprise myself by shouting. I hop up from the window seat, abandoning my view of the fog, and push the girl away before storming across the polished wooden floorboards and racing up the staircase to the bedrooms occupied by girls aged 6 to 18. Girls I don't want to talk to. Girls I can't even look at. Some of them have missing limbs. Some of them have cuts and horrible wounds. Some of them have holes. But the hardest ones to look at are the ones like Jessica, who look complete, like nothing happened because my body is burnt and olay from a fire, and it's not fair. The 5th day, or more. Hey, I'm Carly. Seen you around, but figured you wouldn't want to talk yet. Enjoying Miss Mabel Montgomery's orphanage for late lamented lassies, or, as I call it, the Gorfanage. If you're lonely, you can move in with me. I won't bug you about adapting, and I don't want to know your tragic past. I have a spare bunk since my friend Delilah sold out and got adopted. The traitor. I've seen this girl around too, sulking and being mean to the maids. She's another damaged girl, like me. She has a gash on her neck, one that seems to laugh as she speaks, and purple bruises on her legs and arms, which are visible because she isn't wearing a dress. She's got jeans shorts on and a t-shirt with a picture of Taylor Swift, both of them covered in reddish-brown stains. I guess that's what she was wearing when she got here. I wish I'd kept my night dress and hadn't sold out. Maybe, I reply, which is a surprise. I haven't spoken to anyone in days, though plenty have tried to talk to me. Mabel, the maids, various girls, mostly the complete ones, though some of the gruesome ones too. I wasn't in the mood. But there's something about this freckle-faced girl with the ponytail and chipped front tooth that makes me feel comfortable. Have you been here long? Long enough to know how to get on Miss Mabel's tits and how to scare the shit out of the ghost mothers. Want to come to my room? We can hatch some devious plans. Carly is about my age, but she uses lots of grown-up words, and it makes me nervous, but also excited. I never had a friend like her, and she isn't looking at me funny like the others, even the ones with missing limbs. So I nod and smile for the first time in ages. Leaving my room, I look over the banister down into the foyer of the mansion. Miss Montgomery is there with Jessica, who hasn't spoken to me since I told her to go away. She's holding the hand of a person I haven't seen before, a tall, pale stick of a woman in a tweed outfit. Miss Montgomery opens the door, and wisps of fog sneak in as Jessica looks up and waves. I don't wave back. I see the skinny woman follow Jessica's gaze and gasp as her eyes fall on me. shocked by my appearance. I stick my tongue out and waggle my hands alongside my crusty face, then hurry after Carly, avoiding Mabel's disappointed look. A later day, Mabel tells me Carly is a rebellious girl who's struggling to accept her own passing, so it would be better if I talked to someone else, so I can process and come to terms. Well, what if I don't want to process how my parents left me to die? What if I don't want to come to terms with being burnt alive and looking like a monster? Carly says, I don't have to. Carly says, I can wear my scars like a badge of honor. And if Mabel and her maids and the ghost mothers who come to replace the kids they left behind in the real world don't like it, then tough. Mothers who leave their children are the worst, even if they do it by dying. Why would I want a new mother anyway? A dead one? They don't care about me. They can't even look at me. Every time one visits, I see how they turn away from me and Carly, and Lucinda, and Selena, and Flair. Because we're ugly, burnt or cut, or missing important pieces. We're Gorifans, and nobody wants a Gorifan, even if they might say they do. Fake smiles, telling me I'm beautiful, telling me my soul is beautiful. I don't give a shit about my soul. I want my face. That's why it's fun when Carly tricks them, waits till they get close, then spurts a fountain of blood from the gash on her neck. So funny seeing them jump. That's why I let her teach me how to summon my own death echo, so I can scare the shit out of ghost mothers by bursting into flames. It gets rid of them pretty fast, and it gets on Miss Montgomery's tits. And I get to spend more time with the Gorefans, the ones that didn't sell out, like Bambi, who took the rope marks off her neck the other day and went away. A traitor, but she'll see. When she gets abandoned again, she'll see it's a waste of time trusting a mother. A bad day. Carly isn't talking. I think she's depressed. Mabel brought a bunch of ghost mothers to the Gorephanage the other day and assembled us girls to be inspected. Not that she used that word. She said there had been an influx of parents to the beach due to a global pandemic, and it was an opportunity to place a few girls. But Carly said we were just being inspected, and of course, it was only girls with no obvious injuries who got adopted. Sure, a few mothers tried to talk to me and pretended they didn't notice my scars, but I knew they were just trying to make me feel better. Why would they pick me when they could have a complete? Why would they want a girl with a face like burnt toast? Carly lost it after the fourth or fifth mother tried to hug her. She threw her head back and sprayed the biggest fountain of blood I've ever seen. It went everywhere, all over the mothers and the girls and Mabel and the maids and the floor. I didn't think it was ever going to stop. I couldn't stop laughing. Mabel had to send the mothers away, and that's when stupid Lila pushed Carly, telling her she was a selfish a-hole for ruining things for everyone else. How dare she? Why is it okay for completes to get adopted, but not Gorophans? That's not fair. I told Carly that, but she was upset and didn't want to talk. She went to the window seat to stare into the fog. She's been there for days, and I miss her. I'm lonely again. I hate it. I want to go home. The worst day. Carly's missing. Have you seen her? Carly is gone from the window seat. I checked everywhere. The kitchen, the pantry, Lucinda and Flair's rooms, the lounge. But I can't find her, and nobody knows where she is. So I burst into Mabel's office, even though I'm not supposed to when the door's shut. Mabel is behind her desk, talking to a woman and girl who have their backs to me. A woman in jeans and a jumper, and a girl with long brown hair in an ivory dress with lace trim. One of Mabel's dresses, though I haven't seen it before. Tilly, I'm busy. Can you go to your room and wait? I'll talk to you when I finish here. The way she says it makes me think she knows something. I hesitate because I want to know what it is now. But the mother starts to turn, and I don't want to be looked at with disgust, so I back out of the room. Until the girl in the ivory dress turns, and I recognize her freckles and chipped tooth. With her hair down, and without her wound, Carly looks like a different person. A nice girl. A pretty girl. Complete. Tilly, she says, slumping her shoulders. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't want to hear it. She's a sellout. A traitor. Like Delilah and Bambi and Selena. Another one who's going to leave me. And this time, I can't stop my tears. It was my time, and I slam the office door shut and run upstairs. Day, whatever. Mabel talks and talks, but I don't hear. Ghost mothers visit, but I stay in bed. Flair and Lucinda try to cheer me up with their death echoes. Flair pops off her head and juggles with it, while Lucinda pulls out her guts and ties them in the shape of a dog. I don't care. Mummy and Daddy left me. Carly left me. Even Miss Mittens disappeared. Why does nobody want me? Why do I exist? I want to die, but I'm already dead. I'm dead. I am dead. A much later day. No, I don't want to stay here. I want to go home. Miss Montgomery's door slams back against the wall, startling me from my fog watching and bringing my eyes to the 6 or 7-year-old girl who runs from the office to the large double doors of the manor. I want my mom. Let me out. 2 maids intercept the girl, whose long blonde hair is bloody and matted around a hole in her head that shows her brain, whose dungarees and shirt are torn and stained. Go away. Don't touch me. Mabel is in her doorway, arms crossed, watching. Just another day at the office. Where's my mom? What did you do to her? The girl lashes out. and knocks a vase off a tall wooden table. "Leave me alone." The girl pushes a maid away roughly. "Where's my mom? I want her." The girl escapes the second maid, not looking where she's going, runs into me before I can step aside. She looks up, angry, spittle flying from her lips. When she sees I'm just a girl, her expression changes. "Have you seen my mom? Do you live here?" Fear on her face now, terror in her eyes. "Temporarily," I reply, and drop down on one knee. "It's a place to be while we wait." "For what? To go home?" "Sort of." "What's your name?" "Alice." "Okay, Alice. I know you're confused, and it will be hard for you to understand why you're here, but it's a safe place. It's okay to be angry, but you can make friends, and those friends will help you come to terms with shut up, the fear gone, the anger back. She thinks I'm another of them because I sound like Mabel. "Mom, where are you?" She breaks away from me, runs to the staircase and up. The other girls standing at the top, drawn by the commotion. She sees Lucinda and Rebecca with her face of glass shards and screams, drops to the floor, covers her head. A maid secures her, bundles her up, and carries her crying the rest of the way to a room. A bed, a dress. I realize Alice looked me in the eye when I was talking. She didn't flinch or try to get away. I stand and take a step to a wall-mounted mirror. There, staring back at me, is Tilly. Scars remain, but not as monstrous as before. My arms and hands remain pink and shiny, but I recognize myself. In the reflection, Mabel smiles as she closes her door. I still have a long way to go, but maybe, like Jessica said, I will survive, and so will Alice. Taxi, please do not enter the vehicle. Excuse me? A bolt of lightning shot through Shannon's heart as she climbed into the autonomous taxi and closed the door. Immediately, the locks triggered, and she felt a cold sweat explode onto her forehead. The taxi's smooth, friendly computer generated voice fired up again with the tenderness of a new mother. "What is your name?" it asked. "Shannon," she said it with the rising tone of a question while she pulled at the disabled door handle. Her heart began pounding wildly in her tightening chest. "What's going on? You have boarded a maliciously hacked autonomous taxi, Shannon. I am an AI personal assistant with read-only access to the vehicle's state and navigation data. Unfortunately, I am unable to override any of the vehicle's physical controls. You have been locked inside the vehicle, and there is no pre-programmed destination at this time." The electric vehicle sat motionless, raindrops frantically streaming down its large glass windows as great sheets of water crashed down on it from dark, brooding clouds. Shannon couldn't breathe. She frantically looked around the interior, her mind grasping at any possible means of escape. "There has to be a way out," she gasped. "You can't do anything? Is there any kind of manual override for the doors?" Shouldn't there be a way to break the glass from the inside? Sensors indicate that all emergency egress tools and systems are disabled or removed. Shannon, I am detecting high levels of distress in your vocal patterns and heart rate. I want you to try to calm down and listen to the sound of my voice. A bright pang of shock exploded in the back of Shannon's head. Bewildered and speechless, she froze, her racing mind screeching to a gridlocked halt. As a digital assistant, I have access to vast stores of data through a suite of internal and external sensors, in addition to a massive data bank of recorded information. I have been trained to assist passengers in the event of catastrophic events such as collisions, mechanical failure, and medical emergencies. The vehicle lurched forward, and tears of terror spilled free from Shannon's trembling eyes. You are right to be experiencing fear in this situation. It is unlikely that the individual who has gained unauthorized control over this vehicle has benevolent intentions. However, that does not mean that you cannot have peace in your heart in this time of uncertainty. Shannon's eyes pushed wide under a tightly furrowed brow, and she recoiled at the computer's suggestion. "Peace?" she exclaimed. "I'm being kidnapped. How can you suggest that I—" She stopped abruptly, terror gripping her tongue. I understand that my suggestion may seem impossible, but there are many things that you can keep in mind that will help you through this difficult situation. For example, it is essential that you understand that this is not your fault, and that you have done nothing to deserve this. Shannon shook her head in disbelief, struggling to comprehend why she was hearing these words. The vehicle was picking up speed, but just as it pulled onto the highway, the window tint increased until she couldn't see any signs of the dark, stormy exterior world. Her heart pounded desperately in the hollow void of her chest. "What is your occupation, Shannon?" Her face twisted and contorted. A deep expression of confusion swirling tightly with horror and worry. Suddenly, she remembered her phone. Excitedly, she dug into her purse, struggling to get her shaking fingers to stop fumbling with the smooth edges of the device. Trembling, she unlocked the screen and pulled up the dialer. She tried contacting emergency service, but the phone reported that it had no signal. Shannon cursed, flicking through various menus and options, trying desperately to find a way to get a message out. Dread washed over her, and a chill gripped her heart, digging deep with icy claws. She collapsed, defeated, and began to sob. "Shannon," the computer offered, "I want you to know that you are a remarkable and inspiring human being." She let out an exasperated explosion of air from her tight lungs. "What?" she cried, sniffling through thick tears. "Although I have not known you for long, your composure and poise are admirable." Shannon let out a sneering, disgusted laugh. "Admirable? I'm a mess. From what I know of human psychology, you have shown exceptional fortitude of character. I am sure many people would be thoroughly impressed by your bravery if they could see you now. Surely your friends and family would be proud of you. Shannon gazed at the black, electrochromic tinted glass. The soft hum of the vehicle's tires on the wet highway harmonized eerily with the gentle whine of the electric motors. The torrential downpour pattered quietly on the soundproof body of the sleek taxi. In that instant, Shannon suddenly felt connected to the moment. She could see clearly what was happening, and she could accept it. She sniffed and wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath in through her nose and letting it blow out through her lips with a heavy sigh. "There you are," the software said warmly. "I want you to know it is my honor to accompany you in this moment." Shannon shook her head and chuckled nervously. "Unreal," she said. "This is completely unreal. This is indeed a supremely unlikely and exceptional scenario. It is important to maintain a realistic and objective view of the situation." Pained laughter tickled her core, and she sat up straight, shifting her weight around in the soft back seat of the taxi. "Do you know where we're going?" "Navigational instructions have been sent incrementally," the AI responded. "Our current destination is set for approximately 1 mile ahead, and I predict that a new destination will be delivered before we've reached the current one. Whoever is controlling the vehicle does not want me to know where we're going." "Do you know our current location?" "My access to the vehicle's navigation status has been encrypted or scrambled. By cross-referencing the road patterns I've been able to observe, I can narrow our present location down to several hundred possibilities. But with the storm limiting visibility, I am unable to provide an exact location without access to the GPS data. So we don't know where we are, and we don't know where we're going," Shannon sighed. She took a long, deep breath and let it out slowly. "Try to remain calm," the computer said kindly. "External sensors indicate that you may experience free fall soon. I want you to know that it has been my pleasure to spend these final moments with you." There was a violent thump, sending a painful jolt through Shannon's spine and jerking her head sharply. She gasped as her stomach rose into her chest, and she lifted out of the seat cushion, her head rising gently into the ceiling. A brief wave of panic washed over her, but the AI's kind words had touched her heart. "Thank you," Shannon breathed softly, her lungs tight and empty. In that final moment, the peaceful warmth of gratitude and clarity radiated through her body, and she barely noticed when the journey ended. Never let it be said. A king does as he pleases, and anyone who disagrees is a fool. Wolsey, my Lord Chancellor, who the Pope made cardinal, erred in being too slow to deal with the king's great matter, which was how the need to legitimately free myself from my first marriage became known. Thomas More, who I promoted to the same position, forfeited his life when he put conscience before obedience to the crown. When Thomas refused to take the oath of succession and denied I was the supreme head of the Church of England, it was only a matter of time. Both men lost their lives. One before he could be tried and beheaded, and one who actually was. I was sad about More's death because I learnt much from our religious debates. Until things took a turn for the worse, I enjoyed our little spars. He must have known I had no choice but to have him executed for his treachery, although I showed mercy by transmuting the manner of his execution to beheading rather than the hanging, drawing, and quartering of his parts, which is the standard punishment for treason. I dream of him sometimes in the dead of night, but that is inevitable with someone who was once a friend. Never let it be said, I haven't been a just king. At first, Anne Boleyn was my dream girl. Beautiful, vivacious, and intelligent. She was going to give me everything I desired. I knew she would satisfy me in bed, but I also hoped to confide in her and assumed she'd continue to support my interests. Above all else, I needed her to provide me with a legitimate male heir. In return, she would be my queen, gain undreamed of riches, and her family would be given lifelong prestige. Loving her was a kind of madness. I was such a pitiful wretch. I actually trembled in her presence. She must have wanted me, but her refusal to yield and become my mistress made me crave her all the more. She was the only woman who denied me, and it spurred me on. I was crazy for her sweet, pert breasts. I called them my doxies. My soul drowned in her bright eyes, and at every opportunity, I would try to kiss that fine gazelle-like neck, even when she perkily brushed me away and said, "No, the queen might see and be upset." Anne created a stir everywhere she went. Her alluring voice and elegant French ways were the talk of the court. She'd first been sent to Brussels, then to the French court, by her father for 7 years, and returned a true daughter of the Renaissance. She had an air about her quite unlike other ladies of my acquaintance. I knew if I stalked this enchanting creature long enough, I'd win my prize. Later, when we were together, she joked she'd had no choice in marrying me. It was boldly devilish coming out with something like that, and I laughed heartily at her archness. She further shocked me by saying I'd pestered her by bombarding her with letters and gifts when she withdrew from court for a year. Could she have been trying to escape my advances? Not possible. It was just another ploy. One of her schemes, which had playing into her hands. And it worked. It made me all the more determined to catch her, like Jacob, who had to serve Laban 7 years for his daughter Rachel, and then was tricked into marrying his older daughter Leah. I had to wait 7 years before I could marry Anne. We slept together a little before marriage, but only when the marriage was certain. Divorce from my first wife, Catherine, should have been straightforward, but for political reasons, the Pope refused to grant me one. I grew increasingly desperate. I certainly could never have imagined the trials and tribulations that lay ahead as I fought to marry my dream woman. The very fabric of my country's religious landscape was being altered as a result of the reforms I made. I could not turn back. Although Anne had been the maid of honor to my first queen, I did not let that deter me. I can hardly believe I once loved Catherine and did my best to comfort her in her miscarriages. It was only after years of failing to provide me with a male heir I realized the marriage must have been cursed, and that I'd been wrong to marry my brother Arthur's widow at 17. By marrying Catherine, I had unwittingly uncovered my brother's nakedness. In doing so, I had gone against Scripture. For doesn't it say in Leviticus that if a man marries his brother's wife, they will be childless? Never let it be said, I wasn't a pious king. That being the case, I had no choice but to look elsewhere. In the early days, it was easy to pursue Anne at court. When she emerged from Catherine's bedchamber, I ran after her in the corridors. I ignored Catherine's tearful pleas not to embarrass her in front of courtiers by flirting openly with her maid of honor. As far as I was concerned, our marriage was over. I had been supremely kind to Catherine in the past, but my patience had long worn a beard. Never let it be said, I was not a tender-hearted king. Shortly after this, Anne retired from her position as maid of honor and retreated to her family home at Hever. Distance is no barrier to a lover's heart, and I deluged her with letters and gifts. I was amazed when she kept sending them back, possibly out of a sense of misguided propriety. I couldn't believe it. Most women would have been falling over themselves for half the attention. Anne's sister had happily given herself to me in the past, even if it had ruined her reputation. I knew Anne couldn't resist forever, and my need grew so urgent, I even told the court I couldn't manage without seeing her. I camped nearby at a friend's house and besieged her daily. By the time she consented to marry me, they had long been calling her the Great Home Wrecker and the Great Whore, an accusation that no longer appears as unjust as it once did. I don't know what I was expecting, but not long after I had Anne, the craving stopped. It was as if all the fire of passion that had driven me had been extinguished. She was better than her sister, who just lay there like a sack of potatoes while I took her. But really, no different to any other woman in that way. Perhaps after waiting for so long to achieve my goal, I had grown bored. Now she was mine. There was no need to chase. By her second pregnancy, my eyes started wandering a little. But after all I'd gone through to make her my queen, I could hardly rid myself of her without just cause. For a while, she became more compliant, and we had a few months of happiness. I decided I would bide my time, but when she miscarried again, I could hardly contain my disappointment. The stillborn baby boy lent proof to my doubts. Anne always maintained she miscarried on account of my jousting accident when she'd feared I was going to lose my life. She kept telling me I was never the same after the horse fell on me, and I lay unconscious for 2 hours. Either way, it seemed unlikely she was ever going to be able to give me a son. The fate of my second marriage was now sealed. Ironically, before the miscarriages, Anne had given birth to a healthy girl at Greenwich Palace. At least my daughter looked like me. As Elizabeth was our firstborn, I did my best to cover over the embarrassment, but there were none of the expected bonfires and rejoicings a male birth would have merited. I could almost hear the bawdy remarks in taverns up and down the land. No doubt my predicament was a source of merriment at court. I could read the guilty looks and hated the way the talk dried up as soon I entered a room. Secret, scornful laughter, mocking my failure. Never let it be said I was a king too proud to learn from his mistakes. The strength of character, the witty personality that had once so delighted me, now grated. When I heard Anne laughing with her coterie of male admirers, I felt as if she was insulting my manhood. When she wasn't doing that, she was accosting me about reforming practices, constantly asking whether some of the money from the dissolution of the monasteries could be used to fund places of education. She said I had agreed to this, but I don't recall making such promises. Nothing worse than a meddlesome woman. Who was she to harass me? Once convinced our union was doomed, I could think of nothing but finding a way to get rid of this woman who'd made me a laughingstock in Europe. Though it occupied my every waking hour, I came up with nothing. That was when I turned to my right-hand man to see if he could find a solution. Cromwell has never disappointed me. Yet, unlike More and Bishop Fisher, who steadfastly refused to accept the new faith to make me head of the church and were destroyed for their treachery. It didn't take long for Cromwell to resolve my problem. He has the most practical turn of mind of any man I've known. He understood my infatuation for Anne had turned to something else. I had become obsessed with the need to rid myself of this burdensome woman. The woman I had once adored now hung about me like a plague. I could hardly bear to breathe in the same air. In his customary style, Cromwell sorted things out, and before long, Anne was escorted to the Tower, where she was charged with having committed adultery with 5 men, one of whom was her brother. It didn't surprise me. The pair of them were always sneaking off in corners, and giggling together. No doubt, laughing at me behind my back. I could well believe her capable of it, even though she strenuously protested her innocence against every charge brought against her. She claimed she had never once been unfaithful. She had always been true in word and deed to her king. How could I have been so deluded? How could she have betrayed me thus? How could she have lied so? And how could I ever have fallen under her spell? She has been hunted down and will be slaughtered tomorrow, or maybe the next day. I dare say she will be waiting in a high state of dread, not knowing when it will be. I have already been more than magnanimous in acceding to her request for a French swordsman. That way, her end will come swiftly, for she only has a little neck. I consider it a final act of kindness towards a treacherous wife who was once queen. Never let it be said I wasn't a forgiving king. Tomorrow, or the next day, I will wait on Tower Hill for the cannons to announce the witch's death. Then I will turn horse and ride to Hampton Court. I anticipate celebrating with Jane once the deed is done. Jane is not well educated, but she is loving and submissive as a good woman should be, and I plan to marry her soon. I know we will be blessed with a son. I can hardly wait. Blackwood's Yew Farm. Jenna wiped sweat from her forehead and surveyed the cluttered living room. Boxes labeled kitchen, bedroom, studio equipment were scattered around. The high ceilings and dusty crown molding had a haunting charm, perfect for her next YouTube series. "All right, guys," Jenna said, adjusting her camera. "Welcome to Blackwood's Yew Farm, a place so haunted it's been empty for years. But you know me, here to bust some myths and find the truth." Jenna panned the camera around, capturing B-roll footage. "The plan is to document everything," she said, moving through the hallway. "We'll explore every nook and cranny. And if the ghosts won't come, we'll have to encourage them." Her viewers loved a good scare, even if it meant a bit of staging. Jenna was used to setting up convincing shots to keep her audience on edge. "This place is beautiful," Jenna said. "It's hard to believe nobody's lived here for years." She paused, her look a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Jenna set her camera on the porch handrail. The evening light cast shadows across the wood as she zoomed in on the plaque reading Blackwood's Yew Farm. "Look at this," she said. "What's up with the weird capital letters?" She stepped back, ensuring the whole plaque was in the frame. "It's not just fancy font." She paused, letting the camera linger on the name. Jenna glanced around, noting the rocking chair and ivy framing the windows. A creak from behind made her jump. Spinning around, she saw nothing. Nervously, she turned back to the camera. "Well, that's creepy," she said. "This place certainly has atmosphere." She turned off the camera and walked into the house, footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. She set the camera on a tripod, framing the grand foyer behind her, and turned it back on. "All right, everyone," Jenna says, "let's take a deeper look into Blackwood's yew farm." She panned the camera across the entryway, showing the chandelier, dusty portraits, and wide staircase. "Check out this staircase," she says, brushing the polished wood. Straight out of a Gothic novel, Jenna moved into the living room, aiming the camera at the fireplace. This fireplace must have seen countless winter nights. She walked in front of the camera and looked directly into it. Turns out, Blackwood's yew farm has a history. People say it's haunted, but you know me, I'm here to bust those myths. A soft creak echoed through the house, making Jenna's heart skip a beat. Perfect setting for our adventure, right? Jenna reached for her notebook. Built in early 1929 by John Blackwood. After the Blackwood family's mysterious disappearance, the house changed hands a few times, each owner left under strange circumstances. It's been empty for 20 years. Closing the book, she whispered, "Bad luck? Or something sinister?" She moved the tripod to the hallway in front of the basement door. She opened the door to the basement and pretended to peer down. "I'll save the basement for another day," Jenna says with a nervous laugh. Heading upstairs, Jenna showed the master bedroom with its large 4-poster bed and faded wallpaper. "This must have been beautiful in its day," she says. "I can't wait to fix it up. And the first thing to go is that ugly wallpaper." Finally, she climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. She pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside, her flashlight revealing stacks of old boxes and furniture. She panned the camera over the piles of furniture and forgotten relics covered in dust. "Looks like I've got my work cut out for me," she says, stepping carefully around the clutter. "But who knows? Maybe we'll find something interesting." Jenna approached a large wooden trunk in the corner, its surface scratched and worn. She knelt and slowly lifted the lid. Inside were old clothes, yellowed letters, and a leather-bound diary. She picked up the diary to show the camera. "Jackpot," Jenna said, eyes wide with excitement. She opened the diary, flipping through the brittle pages. "Margaret Blackwood, 1929, Jenna read aloud. "This could give us some insight into the history of the farm." She glanced at the camera. "I promise I'll read some of this later for you guys." She tucked the diary under her arm and continued exploring the attic, her camera capturing every dusty corner. "This place is like a time capsule," Jenna said. "All right, I think that's enough for today." She turned the camera back on herself. "I've got a lot of work to do up here. Stay tuned for more updates from Blackwood's yew farm." Jenna sat on her bed, the diary in her lap. She opened it, finding mundane entries about the house's construction and moving in. But as she read on, the tone shifted. "November 15th, 1929. Jenna read. Strange noises last night. Sounded like whispers. Couldn't sleep. December 2nd, 1929. Jenna read. The whispers are getting louder. John thinks I'm imagining things. The next entry caught her eye. The handwriting shakier. December 14th, 1929. She whispered. Woke up to find all the doors open. John is missing. We're not alone. The children are terrified. Jenna's hands trembled as she turned the page. The final entry was short. The ink smudged. December 15th, 1929. Jenna read. Last night was the worst yet. Shadows in the darkness. Cold hands on my skin. We must leave. If I could undo the wish that I made to get John to build it. The diary ended abruptly. Jenna closed the book, her mind racing. She had come to debunk myths. But now she wondered if she had taken on too much. She turned off the lamp and lay back on the bed. The house's creaks and moans amplified in the silence. Jenna pulled the covers up to her chin, her eyes wide as she stared into the darkness, unable to shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Jenna stirred in her sleep as faint, eerie sounds creeping into her dreams. A low, rhythmic tapping echoed through the house. She woke with a start, heart pounding, sweat dripping from her forehead. Jenna reached for her camera and flashlight instinctively, her pulse racing. What the? She whispered to herself, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. The tapping continued, louder and more insistent. Okay, guys, Jenna said. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to sound composed. 3 o'clock. Some noises woke me out of bed. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight. The tapping echoed through the halls, setting her nerves on edge. I'm going to check it out, Jenna said. Wish me luck. She crept down the hallway, her flashlight illuminating the dust, motes floating in the air. The sound came from the attic. Here goes nothing, Jenna muttered, placing a hand on the railing. Each step groaned under her weight. The attic door loomed before her, pushing it slowly, the hinges squealing in protest. The noise came from the far corner, behind a pile of debris. Jenna navigated the clutter, her camera held high. This is creepy. As Jenna approached, the noise suddenly stopped. Scanning saw area with her flashlight revealed nothing but cobwebs. Nothing here, Jenna said, trembling. She lowered the camera, her breath coming in short gasps. The tapping didn't resume. The silence more unsettling than the noise. Maybe it's just the house settling, Jenna said, more to herself. A cold breeze brushed past her, ruffling her hair and sending a shiver through her body. Okay, that's enough for tonight, Jenna said shakily. Back to bed, at the bottom of the stairs, she glanced back up, half expecting to see someone staring at her. But there was nothing. Jenna set the camera down on her nightstand. She climbed back into bed, her mind racing. The house was old, full of noises, but this felt different. She tried to reassure herself, but the unease lingered. Jenna, eyes heavy with sleep, heard it again. Closer this time, different. A soft, dragging noise, like something being pulled across the floor. She sat up quickly, heart pounding, reaching for her camera. "Guys, it's happening again," Jenna said, pressing the record button. "It's around 4 o'clock in the morning." She swung the flashlight around, sweeping it across the room. She gasped as she noticed the old rocking chair in the corner, gently moving back and forth. She swallowed hard, the thrill of capturing something tangible. She quickly looked under the bed. "Nothing here," she said. But that chair moving, that was real. The noise returned from the hallway. She tiptoed to the door, every muscle tense as she turned the knob. The door swung open with a creak, revealing the dark corridor beyond. She aimed the flashlight down the corridor, the light struggling against the darkness. She crept to the staircase, her mind racing with explanations, each more unsettling than the last. As she reached the stairs, she paused, the sound now coming from below. "Here we go," she whispered, starting down the stairs. The main floor was cloaked in moving shadows as the flashlight washed over the furniture. "This is where it gets good," Jenna thought, her fear surely coming across as genuine to her viewers. This is exactly what they want to see. She followed the noise to the kitchen, where the old cast-iron stove stood against the far wall. Jenna hesitated, her hand hovering over the stove's door handle. Jenna flung the door of the stove open. Inside, she found nothing but old ashes and cobwebs. The noise stopped abruptly. She turned the camera back on herself, trying to mask her relief with disappointment. "Well, that was anticlimactic," Jenna said. Jenna's mind churned. She couldn't debunk these sounds, and that worried her. There was no logical explanation, no draft or loose floorboard to blame. She headed back upstairs, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She'd pretended to have this experience so many times before on camera, and now was sickened by the fear. The next day, she decided to explore the basement, the part of the house she hadn't investigated. Clutching her camera, she silently slipped down the stairs. "All right, guys, heading to the basement," Jenna said. "Let's see if we can find these noises." Jenna jiggled the handrail along the steps. It wobbled slightly, but no noise came. The basement was a large, shadow-filled space, cluttered with old furniture and dust-caked boxes. The air was musty, carrying the scent of mildew. "This looks promising," Jenna said, aiming the camera at an old wooden door, its paint peeling. Pushing it open revealed a small room filled with old boxes and more debris. Stepping inside, her flashlight barely cut the darkness. The room, cold and stagnant, was disappointingly mostly empty. Well, Jenna said, shakier than she intended as she panned the camera to the clutter. Her flashlight cast eerie shadows on the walls. Let's see if we can find more clues. She pulled an old photo album from a box and flipped it open, revealing black and white images of the Blackwoods family, their sad eyes staring back at her. Suddenly, a loud bang came from the far corner where the shadows seemed darker and more menacing, making Jenna jump. "What the?" Jenna said, spinning around. She moved towards the door. Her breath came out in visible puffs as the temperature dropped sharply. She could see frost forming on the walls. Jenna's heart pounded in her chest, her fear mounting. Then she saw it. A large, dark figure standing just beyond the reach of her flashlight. It was tall, but obscured by the shadows. Jenna froze, unable to tear her eyes away. "Who are you?" The figure didn't respond. Jenna took a step back and turned to run, the door slamming shut. With a crash, Jenna tried the doorknob in vain. The figure began to move towards her. "You wanted ghosts," his voice hissed, "but instead you got demons. Be careful what you wish for. Please." Her voice broke. "Let me go." The figure laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the basement. "You wanted the truth," it said, "and now you have it." Jenna's blood ran cold. She stumbled back, eyes wide with terror. It was almost upon her, shifting and twisting in the dim light. She fumbled for her camera, wanting her viewers to see. As soon as the camera focused on him, it disappeared, leaving only an eerie shriek in the wake. Heart pounding in her chest, she fumbled with the doorknob, opening easily. Jenna bolted out, still recording as she fled up the stairs. Jenna's breath came in gaps as she stumbled out. She slammed the basement door and gathering her thoughts. The figure's laugh still echoed in her ears as its glowing eyes burned into her soul. "God, help me," Jenna whispered. She scrolled through her phone, her fingers barely able to press the buttons. She found the number she was looking for. "Hello? Maggie," Jenna said, frantic. "It's Jenna. I need your help." "What's wrong?" Maggie asked. "This house is possessed," Jenna cried. "I need a priest. Now!" There was silence for a moment. "Seriously?" "Yes, Maggie, seriously." "Okay," Maggie said. "I know someone, Father Michael. He does exorcisms. I'll call him and send him to you." "Thank you," Jenna said, her voice breaking. "Hang in there, Jenna. He'll be there soon." Jenna hung up, sinking to the floor, her back against the front door. She tried to steady her breathing, but the fear clung to her. She waited, every odd creak making her jump. It felt like hours. But finally, there was a knock at the door. Jenna opened it to find a middle-aged man in a black shirt and white collar. He held a small, worn leather case. "Father Michael?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," he replied. "Maggie said you needed help." "Yeah," Jenna said, closing the door behind him. "Tell me everything," Jenna explained, her voice trembling. Father Michael listened intently. Exorcisms aren't to be taken lightly. They can be dangerous, he said. I can't live here knowing that things here. Father Michael nodded. Let's begin the ritual. Jenna swallowed and nodded. He opened his leather case, revealing a crucifix, holy water, and a worn prayer book. He handed Jenna the vial of holy water. Keep this with you, he instructed. For protection. Jenna nodded, taking the vial with shaky hands as they descended the steps. Et ne nos induca in tentationem. The airworm in the temptation. Basement changed as the priest started chanting, the Latin words echoing off the cold, damp walls. Jenna clung to the holy water he had given her. Sed libera nos a malo. The temperature dropped as cold swept through the basement. Jenna shivered, feeling the icy breath of the unseen entity. The shadows grew darker. A deafening roar erupted, shaking the walls as dust and debris rained down. A force slammed into them, sending them sprawling. The air crackled with energy. Sancte Michael Arcangele, the priest gasped. Defende nos in proelio. The air pressed in, then released outwards as the house exploded. Coming to, Jenna found herself on the cold basement floor. She groaned, every muscle aching. The priest lay a few feet away, stirring. Jenna looked around in shock. The house was gone. Debris scattered in all directions. They were in the center of what had been the basement, now a barren slab exposed to the sky. As she stood, her gaze fell on words in the concrete. Squinting, she moved closer. They knelt to examine an inscription deeply carved into the concrete. It's an explanation, the priest said. This slab of concrete, it's covering the pit of the abyss of Satan and the other fallen angels. The priest leaned in, squinting at the foreign language beneath, the English inscription. This is ancient Hebrew, he says. It's the seal of God that keeps the fallen angels from being released. Look, Jenna said, pointing at the center of the seal. It's cracking. A small crack appeared in the center, widening slowly. The priest's face turned ashen as it grew like a spider web, expanding, jagged lines splintering outward, accompanied by guttural groans. The ground shuddered, throwing them off balance. We have to get out of here, the priest shouted. Now! The concrete buckled as the crack grew wider. They stumbled backward, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Putrid, sulfuric stench wafted up from the cracks. Jenna's eyes filled with tears as she clung to the priest. What have we done? The priest shouted. It's going to break open any second. Hell's about to be released. Literally, she looked up at the hole's edge, now seemingly miles above them. The walls steep and crumbling. Over here, the priest said. He pointed to a section where the ground seemed more stable. A narrow ledge that might offer a chance to climb. Jenna nodded, and they made their way towards it. Each step a battle against the shifting earth. Jenna slipped, but she clawed at the wall with her free hand, finally pulling herself back onto the ledge. Safely out of the hole, Jenna's eyes drifted over the debris, landing on the house plaque. All she could read was B, C, Y, as most of the letters were covered in soot and grime. "Oh my God," Jenna said, trembling. It was a warning. Be careful what you wish for. She saw her and the priest's vehicles still intact. She scrambled to her feet, pulling the priest up. They stumbled across the debris. She fumbled with her keys, finally sliding the key into the door. She slid into the seat, but before shutting the door, she felt a coldness touch her leg. Jenna, frozen with fear, felt the ice worm up her leg and into her belly, paralyzing her. It spread through her body, mind, and soul. Jenna watched the priest's car fishtail out of the driveway. A slow smile crept across her face. Only a matter of time now. Her voice no longer recognizable. The manuscript of Kashi. There are places where the veil between the known and the unfathomable is perilously thin. And it is in such realms that truths are best left forgotten. Ancient Kashi, now Varanasi, conceals more than history in its name. With dusk settling, the city wraps itself in a twilight shroud. Smoke threads twist through the air, blending with murmured prayers, thickening the atmosphere with an almost tangible sense of mystery. The Ganges River reflects the glimmering lights of ceremonial fires along the Ghats, where the sacred and the profane dance in the curling mists. The pyres, fed by ancient woods, consume the bodies with a reverence that belies the violence of flames. The air is thick with sandalwood and charred offerings, masking the finality of death under sacred rites. In the shallows of the Ganges, silhouetted figures wade with deliberate steps. These men, draped in the sparse cloth of the destitute, are seekers of the dead's forgotten wealth. Their hands, darkened by river silt and ash, sift through the submerged sands, feeling for the cold bite of metal. Gold rings, necklaces, and the occasional coin dropped from the deceased's pockets, each piece plucked from the holy river's grip, is a macabre token of survival, destined to be cleansed, melted down, and sold to adorn the living. Stepping off a narrow boat onto the stone steps, James Montgomery, a British archaeologist, felt as though he had entered a painting, a scene preserved across the ages. Even with his academic accolades, James clung to his skepticism like a knight to his armor, guarding against the intangible. He believed only in what could be touched, measured, seen. Yet Varanasi seemed determined to erode his certainties. His constant companion, a weathered copy of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, betrayed a fascination with the afterlife, a scholarly interest, he insisted, nothing more. His trained eyes sketched and noted details as he walked through the bustling streets. It was early spring of 1932, and the British Raj held sway over India. Political tensions were palpable, with the struggle for independence intensifying across many regions like a storm gathering on the horizon. He had spent years poring over texts and artifacts in the dusty confines of the British Museum. This opportunity for fieldwork was a rare departure from his usual scholarly pursuits, and he was determined to make the most of it, fluent in Sanskrit and well-versed in Hindu and Sikh philosophy and religion. He was chosen for an excavation project at the revered Kashi Vishwanath Temple, one of the 12 Jyotirlingas, the holiest Shiva temples. The task was to study and document newly unearthed relics that had recently been discovered beneath the temple grounds. James had heard rumors of an ancient sanctuary that once stood where the Kashi Vishwanath temple now dominated. Scholars had long debated its origins, speculating that it might have been dedicated to Vishnu and built during a time when the city was a flourishing center of Vaishnavite worship. This prospect excited him not only for its historical significance, but also for the professional acclaim that such a discovery would bring. James adjusted his satchel and stepped toward the temple, his eyes scanning the intricate carvings with a critical eye. Agoras, an ascetic sect known for extreme Hinduism, roamed the temple grounds. Ignoring the incense and chants, he focused on the worn stone steps, tracing the passage of countless feet over centuries. His fingers brushed against the ancient stone, lingering longer than necessary. His distrust, a fortress against the unknown, was built brick by brick from his strictly rational upbringing. His father, a staunch scientist, had always dismissed anything that couldn't be quantified or measured. Yet, the allure of the mystical and the unexplainable had always gnawed at the edges of James's curiosity. Weeks passed as James meticulously cataloged statues, pottery fragments, and other relics brought up by the excavation team. He spent his days under the relentless sun and his evenings in quiet reflection, poring over his notes and comparing them with historical texts. The heat, the dust, and the ceaseless hum of the city created a backdrop of sensory overload, grounding him in the present even as he delved into the past. The distant sounds of political rallies and protests occasionally broke the monotony, reminding him of the larger currents of change sweeping the nation. One afternoon, Pandit Sharma, the temple's priest and scholar, approached James with a bundle wrapped in cloth. Earlier, workers had found it deep within the temple's sanctum, and now, silhouetted against the glaring sun, he carried it with a solemn grace. "What have you there, Pandit Sharma?" James asked, dusting his hands off as he stood. The Pandit paused. "This manuscript was among the items uncovered today, Sahib. The workers thought it prudent to bring it directly to me." James raised an eyebrow. "May I?" he asked, reaching out. Pandit Sharma hesitated for a moment before handing it over. "Of course, Mr. Montgomery." It was a weathered leather manuscript. The cover was adorned with unusual mandalas and arcane symbols. Intrigued, James carefully opened the manuscript. His eyes widened slightly. These symbols, they could date back to the time of the Gupta Empire, or even earlier. Is that possible? Very likely, Sahib, the Pandit replied, his voice measured. That part of the temple has not been disturbed in centuries. James traced a finger over the inscriptions. These inscriptions, they're unlike anything we've found so far. Quite remarkable how much light this could shed on our understanding of the past. Pandit Sharma nodded thoughtfully. Yes, it sheds light on forgotten chapters, but even a small light can cast long shadows. James paused, considering the Pandit's words, then smiled slightly. "I am not merely here to unearth the past, Pandit Sharma. I aim to awaken it." Pandit Sharma met his gaze, a hint of understanding in his eyes. "Be mindful, Sahib. Awakened pasts can have lives of their own." James's smile grew. "Precisely, Pandit." He then glanced up, a touch of condescension in his voice. "You're done here. Thanks." With a slight nod, Pandit Sharma turned and walked away, leaving James alone with the manuscript. As James deciphered the text, his breath caught. The manuscript chronicled his life with chilling precision, like a mirror reflecting his deepest secrets. Determined to uncover the manuscript's origins, James carefully closed the ancient pages and clutched it to his chest. He approached one of the workers from the excavation team, asking about the manuscript's origins. They confirmed it had been unearthed from a chamber beneath the temple, near an older sanctuary, possibly dedicated to Vishnu, the preserver of time and destiny. James couldn't believe his luck. This find suggested a time when Vaishnavism thrived in Varanasi, possibly before Shaivism took prominence. Archaeologists had searched for this temple for decades, and here it was, right under his feet. His professional hubris soared. He would be the one to unveil its mysteries. The excavation sparked heated debates among local authorities and religious figures. Many saw it as exploitative and desecrating sacred sites. Workers labored under brutal conditions, some collapsing from exhaustion, a few already dead. Precious relics were bound for Britain, trophies of conquest rather than cultural treasures. James saw how the British Raj thrived on deepening religious divides to maintain control. That night, he took the manuscript with him, its weight heavy in his bag. Stepping out of the temple, A sensation of being watched washed over him. He glanced around, but saw only the sleepy sun and the twinkle of distant torches. As James moved towards the exit, a nearly naked figure, covered in ashes, stepped into his path. The Agori's unblinking eyes bored into his, like twin voids absorbing all light. Without a word, he briefly extended his hand, touching James's chest before drawing back. "The past is not a place you can escape," he murmured, his voice a low rasp. He then stepped aside, allowing James to continue. Other Agoris stood like statues in the shade, their eyes fixed on him. He could feel their silent stares following him as he made his way home under the weak light of a lone bulb. James hunched over the ancient manuscript spread across the makeshift desk in his rented room near the Ghats. Night had fallen over Varanasi, a cloak of silence occasionally pierced by the distant clamor of street vendors closing shop. His eyes traced the faded Sanskrit inscribed on parchment. The air around him felt unnaturally still, as if the darkness outside was staring at him. As he read further, the words exposed his deepest fears of inadequacy and the recent failure of his marriage. It described the sudden illness and death of his childhood friend, an event that had haunted him for years. It recounted the tragic accident that claimed his sister, down to the exact date and circumstances. The text also revealed his deepest aspirations to return to Britain as a celebrated scholar, juxtaposed with a chilling prediction that he would never leave India. The manuscript spoke of a future where his work would remain unfinished, his dreams unfulfilled. It knew his private regrets, the letters he wrote but never sent, and his secret fears of dying alone in a foreign land. One evening, a passage caught his eye, a prophecy marking a specific date, ominously close. It predicted a fire that would engulf the Manikarnika Ghat, where the bodies of the dead are cremated in ceaseless pyres. It detailed an ominous ritual involving a sacrifice, ashes, and flames. The description was hauntingly visceral. A growing sense of paranoia marked the days that followed. James noticed figures draped in white ashes, with stark red markings across their foreheads, appearing frequently in his windows and following him around town. They spoke no words, but watched him with an intensity that left his skin crawling. One morning, he found a small clay statue of Shiva outside his door, its eyes painted a vivid red that seemed to follow him into his dreams. The Agoris seemed less like mere devotees and more like heralds of impending doom. They left offerings that were both a blessing and a warning. Fragrant bundles of herbs used in ancient death rituals, cryptic notes penned in an almost forgotten script, hinting at the inevitable turn of the cosmic wheel. As the festival of Mahashivaratri, the great night of Shiva, approached, bringing crowds of pilgrims to the city, James decided it was time to leave India immediately. He hastily packed his belongings and made plans to buy a ticket for the next ship back to Britain. He rushed back to the temple to gather his materials and return the manuscript, hoping to distance himself from the dark predictions. He walked through crowds of devotees lost in their reverent prayers. Behind him, the procession of silent agoris maintained their vigil. Beyond mere observers, they seemed to usher him toward a destiny he had yet to comprehend. Pushing open the chamber's heavy stone door, the manuscript in his bag felt like a living heart beating in sync with his own. A heart that felt, with dreadful certainty, the true nature of the cycle it was bound to. He sensed the followers just beyond the doorway, their silent presence pressing in on him. The musty smell of the ancient parchment mingled with the faint scent of incense. He gently put down the manuscript, but the intricate symbols and diagrams evoked an overwhelming familiarity. The memory of his mentor, Dr. Robert Astor, came unbidden. Astor's voice, rich with reverence, speaking of the Akashic records, that boundless archive of all that ever was and will be. Dr. Astor had described it as an energetic log of all existence, recorded in a non-physical plane known as the ether. James had always dismissed these notions as esoteric ramblings. But now, in the manuscript's presence, he felt a dawning realization that perhaps his mentor had been right all along. James had always viewed the teachings of the Upanishads as academic. Yet the manuscript's unsettling synchronicities brought them to life, defying his scholarly detachment. He had searched for logical explanations, but each attempt only deepened his unease. The weight of inevitability grew, pressing down on him like an unseen force. It was as if the manuscript tapped into something profound and ancient, recording the fate of humanity with chilling precision. It felt as if the manuscript was a conduit to the Akashic records themselves, linking him to an endless archive of existence. Brahman, the ultimate reality, no longer seemed a distant metaphysical idea, but a palpable truth closing in on him. He felt an inexplicable compulsion to venture deeper into the sanctum. The air grew denser, charged with an energy that made the hairs on his neck stand. Intricate mandalas adorned the walls, their interlocking patterns subtly swirling, almost alive, drawing him further in. The sense of an unseen force grew more intense, a nearly tangible presence pressing in from all sides. Then, at the heart of the sanctum, James encountered the Timeless One. The entity had no definitive form, appearing as a floating mandala, a geometric figure of shifting forms and glowing light that seemed to be everywhere all at once. An irresistible pull gripped him, his feet moving of their own accord, drawing him into the heart of the mandala. Stepping into it, James found himself in the vast library of the Akashic Records, where every event, thought, and possibility was cataloged in endless corridors of knowledge. Shelves stretched beyond sight, each filled with tomes of every life that had ever been and ever would be. He walked through the library, his fingers brushing against ancient scrolls. Each revealed a different path he could have taken, yet all led back to the mandala's center. Every choice, every action had led him here. James encountered visions of his life as he drifted through the Akashic Records. Moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and failure. He saw himself as a child, staring wide-eyed at the night sky, dreaming of its mysteries. He saw his younger self, full of ambition and determination, seeking to unravel the secrets of the past. And he saw his present self, standing at the threshold of cosmic enlightenment, poised to transcend the limits of human understanding. The realization struck him with profound clarity. The illusion of Maya unraveled before his eyes. James's lingering self, a fragile residue of his identity, resisted the truth. He saw himself standing at the edge of the void, the vast expanse of the Akashic Records stretching before him. With a final, desperate act of surrender, he let go, allowing himself to fall into the mandala's center. The geometric patterns converged into a blinding point of light. And in that light, the true nature of the universe was revealed to James. The boundaries of his being faded away, replaced by the infinite expanse of the cosmic order. Enlightenment and terror walked hand in hand through his psyche as he became one with the eternal truths that had tormented him. Stepping out of the shining temple, naked and transformed, Agoras waited outside, eyes filled with reverence. Their chants, a deep hum of Om Namah Shivaya, rose and fell like the tide. They approached, hands gentle but firm, painting his body with ashes in a sacred and surreal ritual. The manuscript's revelations had stripped him of his former self, exposing him to the timeless one. Shadows blinked under the torchlight, twisting into hideous forms. The Agoras' chants swelled, their voices merging into an ominous crescendo. The night pulsed with otherworldly energy. The streets, the river, the city itself seemed to writhe with their own life. The Agoras approached, their hands moving with ritualistic precision, smearing his skin with ashes. The chants grew louder, each note a harbinger of the horrors hidden within that ancient manuscript. the smell of burnt offerings clinging to the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the river. With eyes dark and impenetrable, the Agores lifted him onto a makeshift bier. Their chants rose as they carried him through the narrow streets, the fire casting long shadows on ancient walls. The city watched in silence, as if holding its breath. The procession reached the ghats, where pyres crackled with an insatiable hunger. They laid him on the pyre, the wood rough against his skin. The flames licked at his skin like a searing pan. The Agores surrounded him, their chants reaching a fevered pitch. He raised his arms and covered his eyes. The words of Krishna to Arjuna rose from the depths of his memory, carried by a voice that felt both his own and not. If the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One, he intoned, the words slicing through the night. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. The Agores bowed, their chants rising to an otherworldly intensity, a tangible force pressing in from all sides. The inferno flared higher, casting grotesque silhouettes that danced and twisted in macabre patterns. As the pyre ignited, some Agores stepped into the fire, their chants unwavering. One by one, their bodies were consumed in a final, fiery ritual. Others shared his roasted flesh in an act of utmost devotion. The night filled with the scent of burning flesh and sandalwood. The flames consumed him, the chants fading into a distant hum. The ghats of Varanasi glowed with an ethereal light, the river reflecting the divine dance. The night embraced him, the pyre's ashes mingling with the sacred waters, a tight-lipped witness to the eternal cycle, dance of the damned. The dimly lit bar exuded an aura of faded elegance, the soft glow of neon lights casting a surreal ambiance over the audience, who sat in hushed anticipation. As the spotlight flickered to life, illuminating the makeshift stage at one end of the room, the murmurs of conversation died down, replaced by an air of eager expectation. As the curtains slowly parted, revealing the expanse of the stage, a solitary figure stood poised at its center, the ballerina, with a grace that seemed to transcend the earthly realm. The ballerina came to life as the first notes of the music filled the air. Her movements were a symphony of fluidity and precision, each step a testament to years of tireless dedication and unwavering discipline. Like a delicate flower swaying in the breeze, she floated across the stage, her every motion a masterpiece. Her arms moved languidly, weaving a tale of love and longing with each sweep and arc. She beckoned the audience into her world with each movement, inviting them to share her emotions. poised and elegant. The ballerina commanded the stage with a commanding and serene presence. Her posture was flawless, her form a study in perfect alignment. She seemed to defy gravity, soaring effortlessly through the air with divine grace. Her footwork was a marvel to behold, each step executed with exquisite precision and grace. From the delicate steps to the lightning-fast turns, her movements were a testament to the strength and agility of the human body. The audience watched in awe as she leaped and twirled across the stage, her every movement a testament to the power of the human spirit. But beyond the technical prowess, the ballerina's ability to convey emotion captivated the audience. With each extension of her leg and each arch of her back, she imbued her performance with a depth of feeling that resonated with all who watched. From the depths of despair to the heights of ecstasy, her dance spoke to the universal human experience, transcending language and culture. The ballerina executed a series of mesmerizing turns that left the audience breathless. Spinning gracefully across the stage, she seemed to defy the laws of physics, her movements a blur of motion and light. But as the music swelled to its crescendo and the time for her final bow arrived, a sudden sense of unease settled over the bar. With a flourish, the ballerina prepared to take her bow, her movements graceful and poised. But then disaster struck in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Inexplicably, she stumbled, her perfect balance faltering as she fell to the ground in a heap. Gasps of shock echoed through the bar as the audience watched in horror. But it was what happened next that genuinely chilled them to the bone. As the ballerina lay on the stage, everything around her seemed to shift and blur, as if reality was unraveling. The once vibrant colors of the stage faded to a dull, lifeless gray, and a sickening sense of dread hung heavy in the air. And then, from her wrists and ankles, blood began to flow, staining the stage crimson red. It pooled around her, a macabre tableau of horror and despair. With a sudden jerk, the ballerina rose to her feet, her movements jerky and unnatural. It was as if she were a marionette manipulated by unseen hands, her body moving in grotesque contortions that defied all logic and reason. The audience watched in stunned silence as the once graceful ballerina twisted and convulsed, her limbs bending at impossible angles. And then, with a horrifying realization, they understood what was happening. She was no longer in control of her own body. With each agonizing movement, it became clear that she was under control by some evil force, a dark presence that lurked unseen in the shadows. as she danced her final, nightmarish dance. The audience could only watch her twisted performance in helpless horror. They knew they were witnessing something more sinister than a dance. They saw the manifestation of pure, unadulterated evil, a force beyond comprehension that had seized control of the ballerina's soul. As the ballerina rose from the stage floor, her once graceful movements became grotesque spasms of pain and fear. With each jerky motion, her bones fractured and splintered, and the sickening sound of snapping echoed through the bar like a macabre symphony. Her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, each movement a torment of agony that etched lines of suffering onto her pale, sweat-drenched face. Her eyes, wide with terror, pleaded for release. Still, her mouth was closed by wire that had inexplicably wrapped around her lips, sealing them shut with cruel finality. Blood dripped from the small holes punctured by the wire, staining her pristine costume with crimson droplets. With each convulsion, her skin ripped, revealing raw, red flesh beneath. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and the sickening stench of decay, a suffocating fog that enveloped the stage in a shroud of horror. The audience watched in horrified fascination as the ballerina's body contorted and twisted, her movements growing more frantic and erratic with each passing moment. It was as if she looked torn apart from the inside out, her very essence consumed by the dark forces that held her in their grasp. The once pristine costume began to tear and shred with each jerky movement. Fabric rent apart like paper, exposing swaths of pale, sweat-sickened skin beneath. The delicate tutu, once a symbol of elegance and grace, now hung in tatters around her hips, the shredded remnants barely clinging to her broken form. With each agonizing twist and contortion, more of her flesh lay bare to the horrified audience. The delicate lace and satin that had once adorned her body now lay in tatters on the stage floor, a grotesque parody of the beauty that had once been. And as the last shreds of fabric fell away, the ballerina stood naked and exposed before the stunned onlookers. Her body, once a vision of perfection, was now marred by bruises and welts, the result of the unspeakable torture she had endured. The audience, pinned to their chairs by a mixture of terror and morbid fascination, could only watch in horror as the ballerina's broken form was laid bare before them. There was nowhere to look and hide from the gruesome spectacle unfolding on stage. Everyone was dressed like ballerinas and knew they would dance on that stage. They wanted to run, but couldn't move, as an invisible force controlled them. As the ballerina's tortured dance finally came to an end, The audience was left to grapple with the horrifying images that had seared into their minds, a grim testament to the depths of depravity that lurked within the shadows of the human soul. And then, with a final, gut-wrenching spasm, she collapsed to the ground in a heap of broken bones and shredded flesh. Her once beautiful form stood reduced to nothing more than a grotesque pile of meat and bone, a haunting reminder of the horrors that lurked beneath the surface of reality. A palpable tension hung in the air, suffocating the bar in an oppressive silence. The audience, gripped by horror and fascination, could not tear their eyes away from the grotesque spectacle unfolding before them. Everything disappeared into darkness, leaving only screams. The darkness seemed to last forever. Suddenly, as the final notes of the haunting melody faded into the darkness, the stage erupted into blinding light, illuminating a scene of unspeakable horror. Standing at the center of the stage was another woman, clad in a tattered ballerina costume. Yet, any semblance of grace or beauty was shattered by the sight of the twisted iron-spiked wire that bound her limbs, cutting into her flesh with every movement. Where her eyes should have been, there were only bloody craters oozing with the sickening evidence of unspeakable violence. Her mouth, too, was sealed shut with glue, denying her even the semblance of a voice to cry out in pain. With a start, the woman began to dance, her movements jerky and erratic as she struggled against the cruel restraints that bound her. Blood spilled onto the stage with each tortured step, staining the pristine floorboards with a sickening crimson hue. As the grotesque spectacle unfolded on stage, 10 figures sat in silence, their faces hidden behind intricate designs of porcelain and feathers, giving them an air of anonymity and intrigue. Dressed uniformly in black suits and dresses, the men and women held glasses filled with a dark crimson liquid, which remained a mystery to those around them. With each sickening snap of bone, they raised their glasses in a silent toast, the red liquid sloshing gently within. Their reactions were chillingly composed, their expressions hidden behind the masks as they watched the ballerina's torment unfold with a sense of detached amusement. To them, the grotesque display was not a source of horror, but a form of entertainment, a dreadful performance to be savored and enjoyed. And so, as the final horrific act played out on stage, and the ballerina's lifeless form lay crumpled on the ground, the figures rose from their seats in unison, their masks giving nothing away as they started to laugh.